Ahoy! Amazon Games released a new roadmap this year, but since then we've had a ton of further announcements. In this video I want to show you exactly those, and I want to show you what the roadmap actually looks like right now, what we know is coming, what we think is very likely coming at a certain point but know is coming eventually, and what we can see in the long run. Let's begin with the consistent updates. What we'll see with every season is a season pass. We see some balance changes monthly with the new balance passes that they're doing now, and we see updates to anti-cheat. In summer we have Season 2. I've made 4 different categories here depending on what the new changes fall under. One for PvP and PvE, one for PvP only, one for mainly PvE, and one for general and other changes. In the PvP and PvE section, the first thing that we have is the new heart rune. You can see this is italic and has a dotted line around it. That means it's one of the things that were on the original roadmap. Along with that, the devs have also announced that there will be block changes. It sounded like these will mainly affect PvP, but I would imagine that will have some effect on PvE as well. And on top of that, there is the weakest ability rework, where they're trying to look at the weakest ability for every weapon and rework that to some degree and make it more useful. I would imagine that some weapons will not get this, like for example the fire staff that just got a rework, but generally that's what we expect for most weapons here. When it comes to the PvP side of things, what was already announced was the Crossworld Outpost Rush, but along with that there will also be an OPR refresh. This means we will see changes to the siege weapons especially, also the wall around the Baron and the corrupted portal on the map. We don't know any details here other than this is meant to make siege weaponry more viable and Baron probably harder to steal, but it's going to be very interesting to see what else is coming with that. We also know that they are working on a faction shop overhaul. I am not 100% sure if this will actually be in the season, but it did sound initially like that would be the case. You can see that I marked it with a little star, so this is one of the few that I'm a little bit uncertain about. It may be in a later season as well, but it may happen here. What will definitely happen in Season 2 is the PvP track overhaul. This especially affects the first 20 levels of the PvP track, where you get guaranteed specific dedicated rewards. However, the rewards after that will also be improved. The loot tables for them, the perk tables will be improved, and you will be able to get them very, very frequently. On the PvE side of things, we have tons of new features in this particular season. The Sandworm Elite Trial will be coming out, and along with that there will also be another 10-man trial, so there will be 2 separate raid sizes essentially. This also comes with raid groups as a feature, which I imagine could also be useful for other things. This could actually possibly affect wars as well. I put it on the PvE side here because that's what it's mainly for, but who knows what exactly is behind that. There will be a new part of the season story as well, which makes sense in context of the season pass, and there will be the Summer Medley Fair event again. What we now know is that the invasion rework is also planned for this point, which should make invasions faster and more intense. So essentially they want to scrap that early build-up and just make it more like the last 10 minutes, but then not as long in total. They also specifically said about this season story that it will this time be a longer quest line and have a real boss at the end, which was a complaint with the last one. Keep in mind, and this goes for the entire season pass, that we will likely not see all of these things come out at once, but throughout the season. For example, I don't think the Sandworm and the 10-man trial will likely come out in the same patch, but rather one comes first and then the other one comes next. So maybe the 10-man trial as a preparation for the Sandworm to make sure that raids are working properly. But we're also seeing general changes in Season 2. We have Transmog as one of the major features, along with new seasonal and world events throughout the season, so we'll probably get more than just the Summer Medley Fair event. I put this under general and other because I technically could imagine some of these events may also affect PvP or maybe gathering events. There will also be more activities for the activity card, and potentially the trophy improvements may be coming here. We know that they have been talking about doing kind of a band-aid solution to the trophy problems that we have at the moment with housing first, and then a bigger one later. And if they're doing a band-aid solution, I imagine they wouldn't take forever to do that. So I think there's a good chance that this might actually be at some point during the summer. Likewise, fishing improvements have been announced to come very soon, specifically to the treasure chests. This one I would also think is probably going to happen at some point during summer. These last two have a star because they're not 100% confirmed to be in summer, but it seems like the most likely point in time. Of course, keep in mind that none of this is guaranteed and everything can change, but this is what the plan seems to be so far. In fall, we have 2 separate updates. On one hand, we have Season 3. In Season 3 there aren't that many specific changes. We have the perk balance adjustment that is coming, where all of the perks in general that we get on armor and probably on weapons will be overhauled to some degree, especially the weak ones is what they want to target here, so they are more useful. We get territory influence updates, so pushing for a war is likely going to work different to some degree. We get the main story quest update. I don't know which part this will be in particular, but this is something they're continuously updating throughout the seasons. And we'll also have seasonal and world events. But what's much bigger in fall is the expansion. On the PvE and PvP side of things, we will see mounts. This is confirmed and on the roadmap. We'll see a new weapon. We know this is some form of focus weapon. If you are interested in what I think is the most likely weapon, I will link a video about that right here, where I discuss that in detail. And also a new hard rune. On the PvP side of things, I think it's likely that we'll see the arena rework and the new arena map here. Since they have the OPR refresh planned for Season 2, I would be a little bit surprised if they're doing the arena thing at the same time. It is possible if they want to just make it a big PvP season, but since they're also doing so much PvE content, I feel like that would just be a little bit too much to do it all at once. And they specifically said that the arena rework and new map would not be coming in Season 1, but soon thereafter. So I would imagine that this falls into Season 3, or at least into fall, and either into Season 3 itself, or into the fall expansion. The fall expansion makes a little bit more sense to me, as that would be a major piece of PvP content for the expansion itself. When it comes to PvE, we know that we'll see a zone transformed. This is very likely First Light, because they've literally removed the NPCs from that zone. With that comes a new story, and this story will likely revolve around the Angry Earth, because that is where the story left off in Brimstone, so I expect this to be some type of Angry Earth zone as well. We also get a new expedition, likely in that zone. We have also been told that at some point this year we get enemies of the simian family, so some type of ape or monkey. This would make perfect sense to be in the fall expansion, because that's the most likely place to introduce new enemy types. Now, most type of monkeys and apes, not all of them, but the majority, lives in tropical areas, or at least in somewhat warmer areas. So my theory is that the new zone that we'll see instead of First Light will be some form of jungle. This would match both with the enemies of the simian family and also with the Angry Earth theme, and would be extremely cool to see, and also be something different from what we have so far. Sure, Evanscale has some places that kind of go in that direction, but I think that is something that can be pushed much further. The season also comes with a gear score increase, and this will come with a gear reset where we actually need to get new different gear. We also know that they are working on improvements to crafting best in slot and farming best in slot, so it seems very likely that those would come out at the same time as this gear score increase and gear reset. Maybe some of them will actually come earlier than that, but this is the latest point I would expect them, just so that people can get their new gear and get ready for the new endgame content. If you aren't aware of the easier ways in which we'll get best in slot yet, then I will link a video about that right here, where I talk about the details of that. That brings us to winter. Here we have, first of all, Season 4, where we have the Season Trinket being introduced, something that can somehow be powered up throughout the season and then gives you an advantage when dealing with the mechanics of the season. I don't know exactly what that means yet, but it sounds like it's mostly going to be a PvE thing, likely, but maybe it will somehow affect PvP as well. I could, for example, imagine that if they had the Season Trinket for Season 1, then it would be some form of fire resistance that helps you both in Forge and against the very prominent Fire Staff in Season 1. But maybe it's also something that is entirely left out of PvP, so we don't know. There will also be a new hard rune again, and there will be cross-world arenas. They're also adding seasonal territory control, but we don't really know what's behind that yet as far as I'm aware. Along with the cross-world arenas, there will also be cross-world expeditions. I don't know if that will include the new trials and the raids as well, but generally there seems to be a lot of cross-world stuff going on at that point. There will be a season trial with mutators, so that's going to be basically, as far as I understand it, something like the Sandworm trial, but with a mutator effect. And there will be a new expedition. This is very likely going to be the second part of the Empyrean Forge, the ice part that I talked about yesterday. There will be a new season story again, and there will also be a main story quest update once again. The goal is to, at this point, have completed the main storyline rework for the entire experience from level 1 to level 60. They say this will not necessarily affect all zones, which I guess means they're not going to do zones like Ebonscale that are already pretty good in themselves and don't really need much work or many changes. Of course, the season will also have seasonal and world events, but there are also various company system improvements, of which at least some they are aiming to finish by the end of the year. They're hoping to have a form of a transaction log. Again, this could happen much earlier, but they are planning to finish it by the end of the year. And some degree of player count change for companies. We don't know the exact number that will be afterwards, but they want to increase it, considering how the system currently works. It's just not quite ideal for the amount of people that you need to have online for wars at all times. They also want to introduce some form of progression system in the company. This is not guaranteed by the end of the year, but it sounded like they wanted to aim for the end of the year with that, but that might also go into next year. And then we have the content that either just doesn't have a date or is long term. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of this will be after Season 4, but just that we don't know when it's coming, and some of it will just be done when it's done and get released whenever that is. So it could be coming in 2 months or in 5 months or in 2 years. On this list I have only included things that were announced this year. Some of the things that they announced right after launch will probably not happen for a long time, or they may have stopped working on them. For example, I don't expect mutated invasions to come anytime soon, because they just simply stopped talking about them entirely. But I think everything they talked about this year is something we can likely expect in the game, because they seem to be a lot more focused on working on these continuous goals now that they've set. So these are things we can likely expect to come into the game sooner or later. When it comes to things that affect both PvP and PvE, they want to improve the nameplates and party visibility. This is something that will especially affect wars, but also raid settings and everything like that, so it will be very useful overall. If we're very lucky, then some of this will come with the raid groups introduction in Season 2 already. They want to do a musket rework. It sounds like they especially want to rework the right tree and make it somewhat more usable at closer ranges. They have talked about company housing as something they want to do in the future at some point, but this one sounds like it's a very, very long way off, so I wouldn't expect that anytime soon. I put it under PvP and PvE because who knows how this will work, if this can be contested somehow, but again, very far away. They want to release some form of instanced practice or casual wars, so people can participate without being part of the entire territory push and everything around that. I would likely expect that to not come before Crossworld Arenas and Crossworld Expeditions are out, because I would imagine that for that to work, they will need the Crossword system, so they have a large enough player count to get those wars to happen. They also want to release a new Outpost Rush map eventually, but said they want to work on the new Arena map first and test that and see if their system works properly, and then they'll get to work on the Outpost Rush map. On the PvE side of things, something that has been hovering over us for ages is the mutator rework. It was meant to come much earlier, they talked about this for ages already, but it seems like they ran into some issues with that. What we know will happen with that is that the whole levels of mutators are gonna get squashed a little bit, so you'll have less different mutation levels, making the progression a fair bit quicker, but obviously the difficulty will jump a little bit more as well along with that. And when that comes, it sounds like we'll also have access to more runs. They're also working on a corrupted portal rework. This should make the frequency of corrupted portals lower and the amount of them around lower as well, but make the reward of them higher and make it more like a world event where everyone is going to go there because there are corrupted portals for once. They also eventually want to revisit the older expeditions and change the boss types for some of them, so that the expeditions don't have as many switching boss types and requiring as many different gear sets. Think for example Jumpers and Narrate in Barnacles. For general things they'd like to add, there is the Barber. We don't know when this will be coming. I'm hoping this will actually be coming this year, but no date on that yet. They want to give us the option to name change. This is probably going to come sooner rather than later. And the ability to copy your character from the live client to the PTR so you have the same gear and everything. They like the idea of adding chat emojis and want to do that in the long run. And they want to change the indicator for rarity on furniture so that you actually know when you get a rare item and it doesn't just look green in your inventory. They want to add some form of a Season Pass aptitude system for people that finish the Season Pass. And they're working on a more significant SLOTH engine upgrade, also in preparation for the upcoming Lord of the Rings MMO that's going to be on the same engine. This is not necessarily SLOTH engine 2.0, we don't know how exactly it will work, it might just be a major upgrade to the current engine, so it could just be SLOTH engine 1.2 or whatever, any arbitrary number, but it should help the performance of the game and many other things hopefully. If you want to see the full roadmap with all of its seasons right now, you can do so by supporting me on Patreon, where I will post that right as this video goes up, because I need to pay my rent this month. But I will also post the full roadmap in the description and in a community post in a couple of days. If you want to know when that is, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified. I will of course also tell you at the start of a video in a couple of days. In the next days we'll also talk about heavy armor, shirking fortification versus elemental aversion, as well as Diablo and Throne at Liberty. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.